Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to remind everyone that our meetings are web streamed and televised, and would ask that you ensure your phones are on silent mode and to keep your camera on and mute yourself when not speaking. And of course, remember to unmute yourself if speaking. Please use the Microsoft Teams raise hand feature icon to be called upon and remove it after you're finished. And if you fail to get my attention, feel free to let me know that. With that, I will call the May 17th regular council meeting to order, and we will look to approval of the agenda, changes to the agenda. I've requested that communications item 7.1 that is listed on the agenda published Friday, the Waverly Street Delhi property be pulled for discussion, and I understand the agenda has been corrected to move that into the corporate services report section. This has resulted in the original numbering of the communications items to be amended. Reference to closed session minutes from May 3rd special council meeting have been listed on the agenda cover sheet. I understand Councillor Ravitz will be pulling resolution from the May 10th CNC meeting when we move to approval of committee reports of committee as a whole. And item 16.1 related to the closed session item has been updated to include a second closed session exemption that was inadvertently missed on the original published agenda. Are there any other changes to the agenda, or could I get a motion to approve the agenda as amended? By Councillor Michelli, second by Councillor Huffman, all in favor? That is carried. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. We have no early closed session, no consent items, no deputations. So communications, we have 4 communications items left on the agenda today. Does any committee member wish to pull any of the communications for further discussion? Seeing none, then we have information memo number 7.1, information memo Long Point Beach access, 7.2, information memo COVID-19 safety plan requirements for special events, 7.3 Delhi Business Improvement Area minutes, and 7.4 Delhi Business Improvement Area minutes from April 14th. The motion to receive the communications as information. Dr. Van Andriessen, second by Councillor Ravitz, all in favor? That is carried. We have the following regular minutes before us today, the council minutes from April 19th, both open and closed, and the special council meeting from May the 3rd, both open and closed. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, could I have a motion to approve both sets of minutes as presented? Councillor Columbus moves, Councillor Shelley seconds, all in favor? That is carried. We have 2 reports of committees under this section of the agenda. I understand Councillor Ravitz would like to pull resolution 20, read the staff report EIS 22-022, the Rainbow Crosswalk installation. Does any councillor wish to discuss or pull any other items from the committee minutes from the Public Hearings Committee of May 3rd or the Council Committee May 10th? Seeing none, unless there's any errors or omissions, could I have a motion to approve the Public Hearing Committee meeting minutes and the balance of the council in committee meeting minutes, both open and closed, including resolution number 20 from the CNC minutes? Mover, Councillor Van Andriessen, seconder by Councillor Ravitz. All in favor? That is carried. Now, Councillor Ravitz, you've pulled resolution 20. Would you like to move the resolution as printed, or would you like to propose an alternate motion?
Thank you, and through you, I would like to propose an alternate motion, and the clerk has this prepared. We'll go to Teresa to pull it up and introduce it on my behalf. Thank you.
Thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Ravitz, I have put the motion on the screen. I will try to make it a little bigger, but I can read it into the record if council would prefer. Here's also. So that report EIS 22-022 Rainbow Crosswalk installation Simcoe be received as information, and that the Rainbow Crosswalk and Simcoe on Union Street at the intersection of Norfolk Street South be approved for installation with the recommended preformed thermoplastic material and as outlined in the report to be funded in full by donations provided by Riders Rainbow Group, and that the Rainbow Crosswalk and Simcoe project only proceed when the Riders Rainbow fundraising dollars are provided to the county, and that staff be directed to initiate procurement to install a Rainbow Crosswalk in Simcoe on Union Street at the intersection of Norfolk Street South when the funds are received. And further, if additional funds are provided by Riders Rainbow Group, that the additional funds be transferred to the Roads Reconstruction Reserve to be tracked separately within the reserve to ensure the funds are used for future Rainbow Crosswalk maintenance. And further, staff be directed to bring back a report and policy on decorative crosswalk guidelines to a future council meeting. Through the chair, we will need a seconder on that.
And if I may speak to it, yes, thanks to the fundraising efforts by Riders Rainbow Group, the full amount has been fundraised with some extra. And we were hoping that we could go with staff's initial recommendation for the materials. It is a thermoplastic paint. And doing some research, I've come to discover how expensive these crosswalks are. So it is not out of line. Staff's recommendation and research into the cost of the crosswalks. The cheapest one I could find was $12,000 in Kitchener in 2018. Would appear that these crosswalks are quite expensive due to the high traffic on the road, the sunlight that reaches it, and having an inferior product could jeopardize the integrity of that crosswalk. We may be touching it up more, and it could actually, in fact, cost the taxpayer more in the long run. So in doing some research, I also found that Niagara had considered a similar price, $15,000 in March of this year. And so I've done some due diligence on my part. The group has gone through the extra effort to get the good paint. They came to me after our initial decision, and they really wanted the correct material. And they felt that since they had done the legwork and the majority of the fundraising, that they should get the appropriate materials. So that's what's brought this back for an alternative motion. It is still in keeping with our decision last week to have a decorative crosswalk policy brought back for our review. And I'm hoping that I can have the support of council to move this project forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if it's just me, but I'm having a difficult time hearing you with your microphone there. I guess my this is great news. So I just would like to confirm through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Rabbits, that the fundraising dollars is already fundraised in full. And
in fact, it exceeds the $15,000 amount. I want to say it's over $17,000 at this juncture in time.
Wow. Congratulations to that group. My only question, I will be in support of this motion. My only question, and I think it's appropriate to have a discussion around future maintenance with this particular material. So I don't recall really discussing that in full last week, because I think we kind of hijacked the method and the type of materials that would be used. So I would just be interested in hearing what type of future maintenance is associated with the thermoplastic materials, but I will definitely be in support of this.
Does any of the staff have an answer to Councillor Martin's question? Mr. Grace?
How is that? All right. So through the chair, to answer Councillor Martin's question, staff have reviewed that. This is a very durable product, so the maintenance on it is really minimal. Expected lifespan for something like this is in the 5 to 12 year range, or sorry, 10 to 12 year range. So really very minimal maintenance cost for us. Certainly will be added to our inventory. We'll do inspections on it and repair as required, but we don't expect there to be any ongoing maintenance cost.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Columbus?
Yes, Mr. Chair, that was my question answered by staff. I wanted to get a reply from staff.
Councillor Vandendriest?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. I will be supporting this motion as long as what I have read is consistent with the fact that the taxpayers will not be burdening any of the maintenance or the installation, that it is fully on those donations, and commend those people who have raised that kind of money in that kind of short time. So amazing on them, and congratulations to them. Thank you very much.
And Councillor Ravitz, it's my understanding that a specific donor came through with a $10,000 donation for this. That hopefully that will become public, but we'll leave that to the group to announce.
Yes, and through you, I believe there's also going to be a press release immediately following council's decision today. So you can expect some more information in our local media about their fundraising efforts. Don't want to steal the win from their sales.
Thank you, Councillor Huffman.
Thank you, Chair. Through you. I guess my question is, at what point now that, congratulations, first off, congratulations, Ryder, and for everyone who was in your corner with this endeavor from the beginning. Good for you, girl. Keep going. My second question, my question is, at what point do you think that we can start installation of this crosswalk now that all of the funds have been raised?
So through the chair, once the funds are transferred over to the county, we will begin working with the organization immediately and starting the procurement process. This is not an overly complicated project, so it's certainly something that will happen in the course of this summer.
Okay, so the course of this summer. All right, that's great news. Perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, the motion is on the floor. Do you want it reread or are we content with it? And we'll put it to the vote. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. Next item on the agenda is reports from advisory committees. We have 4 reports. The Community Policing Committee from April 26th. Does anyone have does any councillor wish to discuss any of the items from the Community Policing meeting? Councillor Huffman.
Thank you, Chair Van Passen. Through you, I just want to rely on the expertise of our clerk, as this system, it's probably not new, but it's new to us. I just wanted to double check. When something comes through at one of the committee meetings, if there's been something passed, we need to bring that forward at council so that we follow through on that recommendation. So I just wanted to double check with the clerk. Teresa, which were the items again? It was the terms of reference. Oh, sorry.
Through the chair to Councillor Huffman, the only motion that would be pending from the Community Policing Committees is the motion where the committee has requested that bylaw enforcement provide an update on the bylaw enforcement services at a future meeting.
Okay, well, we heard it from Teresa, so that was the request. And I just wanted to bring that forward so that we could vote on that and make sure that that occurred. Now, where do I speak to? Okay, so if we can go ahead and vote on that that motion that they have bylaw come and do an update with the community policing group.
So through the chair to Councillor Huffman, I do have a motion that council could consider, that council direct bylaw enforcement supervisor Jim Milson to attend the next community policing committee meeting to provide an update on bylaw enforcement matters within Norfolk County.
Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Martin. Any discussion? All in favor? That is carried. And just to remind everyone, all of the committees, the minutes are received as information, and any specific recommendation that you want council action on has to be brought forward separate from receiving them as information. Is that correct, Madam Clerk?
That is correct, and Councillor Huffman has done the correct actions today.
Councillor Huffman.
Thank you, Chair Van Passen. Through you, there is another item to follow up on in regards to the community policing group. At this point in time, there is no council representative on this committee, which is abnormal because we have council representation on all of our committees. So I would like to put forward a motion that we extend the presence of a council member to this committee.
Would you like to add that the current council member from the Police Services Board be a good fit for that committee?
That would be great. That would be very cohesive. I didn't want to kind of recommend myself, but it does make it very cohesive in terms of getting the information transferred from the Police Services Board to the Community Policing Committee.
So Councillor Huffman has put forth a motion to add a council member to the committee. A seconder would probably name the specific council member in as they second the motion. So Councillor Columbus.
Yes, I would support that a counselor on the Police Services Board actually be appointed to this committee. And I have served on there in the past, and I think Kim would be a good choice, a good choice to be on there representing council.
Have you captured that in the motion?
Through the chair, I have that moved by Councillor Huffman, seconded by Councillor Columbus, that council appoint Councillor Huffman as a representative on the community policing committee.
Any other questions, comments? All in favor? That is. And if there's no other specific items, could I get a mover and a seconder to receive the minutes as information? Martin, seconded by Councillor Rabbit. All in favor? That is carried. Item is staff report. CD 22-041 zoning application to amend the zoning bylaw to permit animal hospital as an additional use on the subject lands in an agricultural zone. Mr. Sloan, would you be introducing this item?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, to council. Regarding this zoning amendment, it went to the public hearing committee on May 3rd. Public comments were received. There are a few engineering items that came up in the technical comments that can be addressed at the site plan stage. The recommendation before you is for an approval to add animal hospital use to the agricultural zoning portion of the property as a site-specific provision, along with a holding provision to ensure the development matters are completed. There's additional information in the staff report, and planning and engineering staff are available in case there's any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for staff? Seeing none, would someone like to move the staff recommendation and provide an alternative? Councillor Van Andriessen, your seconder, Councillor Columbus. Any discussion? All in favor? That is carried. Next staff report, CD 22045, zoning application to amend the Norfolk County Bylaw 1Z 2014 to rezone the subject lands from Hamlet Commercial Zone to a Hamlet Residential Zone. And Mr. Sloan, you present this one as well.
Yes, thank you. And again, through the chair to council, the zoning amendment went to a public hearing on April the 5th of this year. There were no comments made by the public. However, there were some council member comments, and staff had very similar comments as well about the prospect of removing the commercial zoning of this property that could eliminate the potential one day for another business in Andy's Corners. Staff with this report, we're recommending a special provision be added to the property that would allow for a large list of many of the commercial uses from that existing zoning to continue to be permitted on the property, so that one day the future owner could establish the business again and they wouldn't need to come back for a zone change. So essentially, we're kind of flipping it so that right now, instead of the commercial hamlet zone, which actually allows residential, it would be the residential hamlet zone, but it would still allow appropriate commercial uses. Those are listed on page 94, I believe, of the package. So we're not necessarily recommending to continue to have gas station, car wash, fire hall, but there's a list of a good 18 plus uses that would be commercial that could still be allowed in the hamlet in the future. So staff are recommending approval of that. This can work for the applicant, but still keep that potential there. There's additional information in the staff report again, and staff are available if there's questions on the matter. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you to staff for taking consideration of the comments and finding solutions that work for everyone. So, any questions for staff? Seeing none, would anyone like to move the staff recommendation and provide an alternative? Councillor Van Andrieschie, I know you have commented on this, so you're moving it. Seconded by Councillor Huffman. Any discussion? All in favor? That is carried. Staff report CD 22-047, official plan and zoning amendments, development application proposing to amend the Norfolk County official plan from mixed residential commercial designation to mixed residential commercial designation with a site-specific policy area. Then Mr. Sloan, you're on deck again.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to council. This public hearing committee for the official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment was held on May 3rd as well. There's been no technical issues raised. There's a few matters being dealt with that could be dealt with the minor site plan as it relates to the parking lot. There have been 5 public submissions that were received as part of that public hearing committee, including one of the submissions was on behalf of several landowners. Since that time, council's also received an additional follow-up public submission via email yesterday from one of those individuals that submitted prior. I did have a follow-up conversation after the public hearing committee with the representative member of the public. And we did have a good talk through some of the history of the area, the policy matters under consideration, some of the future directions for the area and the downtown, and to get a better understanding of the implications that this proposal could have. If it's okay, I'll talk a little bit more about this particular file because there is a lot of concern that was expressed about the type of retail and the implications thereof. I did provide some comments in the staff report responding to each of the individual comments and submissions that were made. One of the attachments has the planning commentary that has some additional planning comments in there as well. I just wanted to raise that, as I say in the report, several years ago when cannabis was legalized, and it happened to be at the same time I was working on a new zoning bylaw for a municipality, former municipality, and working with other planning colleagues, we did look at whether or not sale of cannabis could be considered different zoning. And through legal review at that time, over the course of the last several years, it's been identified and confirmed as part of retail. Similar to how a liquor store, a beer store, these are retail. So where retail is allowed, different retail could happen. It could be a shoe store, it could be a hat store, but it could be this type of a store as well. I did also canvass, in addition to colleagues in urban areas, I canvassed a network group of rural and county planning directors and officials to see whether or not anyone in Ontario was treating it any different. And they reaffirmed the direction that I've already been saying. In fact, to the degree that it's now been specified, even in the Cannabis License Act, that the Planning Act matters about zoning cannot distinguish it as its own use or separate. And so that is the way that the analysis was then done as part of this planning review and as part of the report, is that whether or not is this site at this location, is it appropriate and compatible to allow retail, no matter what type of store. So when looking at it, given the adjacency to downtown, that it's at a busy intersection right at the Highway 24 Norfolk and an arterial road in Victoria. The site has two means of access or egress that can be actually done in a one-way fashion, which is better for traffic flow, and have some parking. And considering that it is in a commercial residential business zone, although there are a lot of houses there, zoning of that area for many years does allow businesses and other institutional uses too. And so this proposal could be considered appropriate and compatible for this specific site and area. Furthermore, the recommended bylaw before you would limit the retail to be within a mixed-use building. So it would have to have residential uses, which is desirable and likely would be conducive to rental units. And also that it's within the existing building. So that's a key point. And one of the deputations raised about some of the official plan policies that we have for these areas really meant at maintaining that residential character. So the policies direct about if you can retain the existing buildings as much as possible, and that's exactly what's proposed here. This one is to reuse the ground floor and at the side for retail, keep the residential. Obviously, the landowners fixed it up considerably from what it was. So with that, I think it does align with the official plan policy framework, although there is an amendment that is recognized. But as such, we're recommending it for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon. Any questions for staff? Councillor Rabbits?
Thank you through you to our staff. I just wanted an opportunity to reiterate the rights of the residents to appeal a decision of council. We received some additional correspondence since our original CIC, and I was hoping that Mr. Sloan could just explain the appeal process, and those that have sent correspondence prior to our meeting this afternoon, that they would still reserve their right to appeal, and perhaps where the deadline would be to receive such correspondence.
Through the chair, that is correct. Written responses that were part of the public hearing committee meeting, and even technically up until today, they are valid and do count. You don't have to make an oral deputation, the written counts. A notice is provided after the council decision, and then there's a 20-day appeal period after that. So within the next 30 days.
Thank you, Councillor Columbus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Councillors have received significant feedback on this application for and against. And I realize, I appreciate that there is a retail, good portion of retail. And I cannot support this. I want it to go to many of the empty stores that we have in the central business district of downtown Simcoe. And I understand that this property in particular is not within the BIA, Simcoe BIA district. And like Councillor Graf mentions, the applicant can go to the Ontario Land Tribunal, the same as what the residents opposed to this project can also go to the Ontario Land Tribunal. Thank you.
Is there any more questions for staff, or would somebody like to move the staff recommendation or propose an alternative? Councillor Rabbits has a question.
Thank you through you. It is a question regarding the site-specific policy area. I'd just like a little bit more information from Mr. Sloan about the requirement for the amendment. This is the first cannabis retail shop that I believe has come before council proper. I just wanted a little bit more of an explanation as to why we have a say, as opposed to some other retail distribution that are in commercial areas that haven't come before council. We haven't been asked about those particular businesses. Just like a little bit more information about that process.
Through the chair, that is a good question. So where retail is permitted, then it's just as of right, and either they can go in and sometimes get a business license, or in some cases don't. If it's a new construction and retail is allowed, it's simply a site plan process, which doesn't come before council. In this particular case, this zoning for this area, and including this site, allows things such as a convenience store. So if it happened to be in the form of a convenience store that there are other things being sold in addition to, then it may not come as part of the zoning amendment to council. There are specialty shops that are allowed in the existing zoning framework from 2014 in this area, but it was determined that this is part of general retail, and retail has its own classification in general is not currently permitted in this zone. And that's why it's before you on site specific.
Okay, thank you to staff. And would anybody like to put a motion on the floor, whether it be the staff recommendation or an alternative? Councillor Rabbit.
With that, I would like to move that this not be approved. And I suppose I should wait to have a seconder before I speak to it. So I'm moving that it not be approved, and I would like to speak to it. Should I have a seconder?
Councillor Columbus, is that second?
Yes. Second.
So the motion on the floor is that the application not be approved. Councillor Rabbit, you have some comments?
Yes, I would like to support those residents that live in the vicinity that have been outspoken regarding this proposal. I don't think I could articulate it any better than was written in Robert Canale's submission on behalf of several residents and Kathleen Noble. I just want to thank them for highlighting those concerns. I don't think I could articulate them any better myself. I think this is a good example of where secondary planning is so crucial and important. We've undergone a process to start secondary planning in Simcoe, and we're hoping for some future reports to council, but would capture how this is outside of our BIA, that this is perhaps not the best use of this property, specifically removing a residential component to add a commercial in. I think if we were to look at this through a secondary plan process, we would likely be recognizing this as a residential neighborhood and not an extension of our downtown. I think we are on a slippery slope where we have mixed commercial, and we could see cannabis retail essentially extending into residential neighborhoods that have historically been residential. And I think that could cause a lot of conflict moving forward. So, this is just one development that I cannot support, but I see this happening again. Should we not engage in better secondary planning and try to grapple with what we're going to do when we have future cannabis retail looking to extend into really traditionally residential areas? I think the residents there have voiced their objections, and I'm here to support them today.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, all those in.
If I may. I think that in the refusal motion that council should indicate reasons for the refusal. And based on the conversation, I would affirm that it would be, I am assuming council is saying that they are refusing it given that it is not consistent with the initial policy statement and it does not conform to the initial plan.
Thank you, Teresa. You would not be out of line in putting those words into my mouth. I'm not a professional planner, but reviewing with the residents and some that have some more subject matter expertise in planning than I myself do, that is that opinion of this council, councillor. The suggestion was perhaps we need to take a break to ensure that the wording is correct. I do want to ensure that I'm protecting the interests of the municipality, should this be appealed.
Through the chair, if we could take a 2-minute break.
No, we'll take 5 minutes just to verify the wording of that motion. Because these are under the Planning Act, a bit of different standard than normal council business. Okay, I think staff have had a chance to get the wording correct on this, so been moved by Councillor Ravitz and seconded by Councillor Columbus. And Madam Clerk, could you read the motion on the floor?
Through the chair, the motion on the floor is before council that the application by Nathan Q, file number OPNPL 2022-096, affecting the lands described as part lots 8 and 9, block 126, plan 182, urban area of Simcoe, Norfolk County, to amend the Norfolk County official plan from mixed residential commercial designation to mixed residential commercial designation with a site-specific policy area be refused as it is not consistent with the provincial policy statement 2020. And that the application by Nathan Q, file number ZNPL 2022-097, affecting the lands described as part lots 8 and 9, block 126, plan 182, urban area of Simcoe, Norfolk County, to amend the Norfolk County zoning bylaw 1Z 2014 from residential commercial business zone CRB to residential commercial business zone CRB with a special provision be refused as it is not consistent with the provincial policy statement 2020 and does not conform to the official plan. And further, that all public input received for this application were considered as part of the decision as outlined in staff report CD 22047 and council decision.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Any debate on the motion? Councillor Huffman.
Thank you, Chair Van Pasten. Through you, I just want to say that I cannot support this motion. It is, to me, a reach. We have a property owner who purchased a property for mixed use residential and retail. This was part of the plan for the beginning for the property owner. It is beyond me to dictate to a property owner of this this property what they can and cannot do. It falls within the realm of support within our planning department. This is 2022. Cannabis retail shops are legal. I would, and I also would like to mention to my colleagues that we received a number of letters in support of this, as well as the group that Mr. Canali represented in opposition. I did take great offense to the cannabis shop being grouped together with things such as adult materials and a fetish shop and things like that. And again, it's 2022. It meets all of the criteria. It's not within the parameters of school or anything like that. So I hesitate to set the county up for an appeal, and I feel that we would not be successful in this appeal. So I will not be supporting this.
Thank you. Any other comment? We'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion is defeated. And I will look to the clerk. Since this is the Planning Act, we can't just leave it as a void. So I will be looking for a mover of the staff recommendation or a different alternative. Like, we can't leave it because it's an application under the Planning Act. You either got to say yes or no, or you have to defer it for a reason. Already said no. That didn't fly, so I suggest that somebody needs to put forth a motion, preferably the staff recommendation, or a deferral for a reason. Councillor Huffman, staff recommendation.
I would like to propose the staff recommendation.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Michele. Any discussion on this motion, or would you like the clerk to read this? I think everyone has it in their package. So, Councillor Vandenbreech.
Just a question through you, Mr. Chair. The residents that are in opposition have the entitlement to appeal as well.
They have full right to appeal.
Exactly.
I think Mr. Sloan has explained that process previously.
Well. Thank
They
you.
will get notified since they said right. See the head nodding from staff.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Seeing none, those in favor? For those opposed, that motion is carried. Thank you to staff for the extra effort on that one. The next item on the agenda is staff report CD 22-050, a zoning application to change the zoning from urban residential type 1, the R1-B with a holding, to an urban residential type 2 and R2 to permit 6 semi-detached units. And Mr. Sloan, you're presenting this as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We'll keep the matters moving here. So this particular proposal for 3 semi-detached buildings for a total of 6 units facing Norfolk Street and Waterford. We do expect a future submission for a future phase of development for the land that's adjacent along Mechanic Street. The matter went to April 5th Public Hearing Committee. I don't believe we had any public comments, but from a technical standpoint, there's a number of engineering items that are to be addressed. And we're recommending a holding provision in a development agreement to ensure that. They include matters such as drainage, water, sewer modeling and connection, boulevard restoration, etc. At the Public Hearing Committee, there was a question from a member of council about the traffic study. I believe the consultant at the time addressed that and indicated when it was done at certain times. It was in October 2021. My understanding, and I'm sure they reiterated, proposals just for a few houses that's going to generate minimal additional traffic, and there's sufficient capacity in the roads and intersection to accommodate it. I would imagine the driveway location in relation to the intersection is probably more pertinent matter to make sure from a safety and technical standpoint. So one of the next steps, I believe, is to consider a consent application to sever the land should the zoning amendment be approved. There's additional information in the staff report. Staff are available to answer any questions, and the recommendation for you is to approve subject to a holding provision. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? Seeing none, is there anyone willing to move the staff recommendation or provide an alternative? Councillor Huffman. Staff recommendation.
Staff recommendation.
Van Andreescu seconds. Any discussion? All in favor? That is carried. Next item, staff report CD 22-051. An application has been received to change the zoning from urban residential type 2 and R2 to an urban residential type 3, R3, to permit an additional unit by converting a semi-detached dwelling into a triplex dwelling. Mr. Sloan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The final development application before you today is to essentially permit an additional likely rental unit, converting the semi-detached dwelling into a triplex, so a moderate form of adding some rental housing in our community. April 5th was the public hearing committee date. Public comments received. One technical item that can be addressed via the building permit. There's additional information again in the staff report, and staff available for questions if any. And the recommendation before you is for approval of the zoning amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sloan. We certainly could use a bit more housing in Norfolk County. So any questions for staff? Is there anyone that's willing to move the staff recommendation? Councillor Huffman, seconded by Councillor Columbus. Any discussion? All in favor? That is carried. Okay, we're going to change gears now. So staff report EIS 22-021, the Long Point Causeway update. Right, we haven't had Councillor Michelle asking at every meeting for one of these, but and Mr. Grice, you'll be presenting the report.
Yes, so through the chair, the report you have in front of you today, as you mentioned, is for the Long Point Causeway and Bridge Rehabilitation. There is a bit of a history associated with this project, so I'm going to try and summarize that to make sure everyone's on the same page. Helpful for me as a new guy to summarize this history as well. So this initiative started way back in 2017 following the Class EA process. Started off as a Schedule B, was upgraded to the more stringent Class C that requires additional studies, archaeological assessments, etc. During the early stages of design, this was split into 2 projects, one the Causeway and secondly the bridge. And this was done due to the condition of the bridge and allowing or working with the permitting agencies to follow emergency protocols and get that work done quicker. The Causeway at that point was put on hold and all work was focused on the bridge. In the fall of 2020, the construction for the bridge was awarded to Sierra Bridge, and that commenced in spring of 2021 once in-water works were permitted. That phase 1 of construction was completed in February of this year, and now we're just starting up phase 2. We're in the middle of phase 2 right now. That's just a kind of a quick summary of how we got to where we are today. The report in front of you today is to amend the project budget for an approximate increase of $3.7 million. That is for unforeseen impacts. These include utility conflicts, geotechnical conditions that impact its bearing capacity on the bridge, and really the overall sensitive nature of building in this area requires additional archaeological monitoring, lost habitat offsetting to make sure we adhere to all the federal protection regulations. Also unrelated to the budgetary impacts, just at the beginning of May, on May the 2nd, I'm going to read this one so I don't get it wrong, the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 793, filed and went on strike. Talks are ongoing and we understand they're moving along quite well, but any significant delays in coming to terms could potentially impact our substantial completion date, which is currently set for November of this year. We do recognize this is a big financial impact on the project, so staff are looking at alternatives for the Causeway rehabilitation, looking at using cold in place recycled asphalt. We're really hopeful that looking at these alternatives will help mitigate the costs on the bridge. And we'll certainly present that information once we have completed our technical and financial review, and that should be coming forward shortly. And just want to finish my intro by acknowledging that we did suffer some setbacks on this project. It did start in 2017, and here we sit in 2022. Perhaps some better oversight by staff as well as our consultants and our partners at the federal and provincial level. Some of these could have been addressed a little earlier. But I can say from my short time here, the project team we have on this file is certainly taking the reins on this, and they're working as partners with these agencies. And we do have this project really back on track. And hopeful with these union discussions that we'll get back to work and meet our substantial completion date. And there is a lot of history with this, so I do have Mike King on the line as well if there's any technical or historical questions, but happy to take any questions from council.
You call this trial by ordeal is when this is the file they hand you first. We have Councillor Martin and Councillor Columbus, but I think we should give Councillor Michelle first dibs at this one.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Pursuant to your remarks, Mr. Chair, to Andrew, welcome to Norfolk County. Andrew, I guess one of the things that I wanted to just ask in the beginning is, I know you have said that staff now have a very good handle, and the majority of staff have been on this for about 18 months. So. And I quite agree. I think that there is a much better understanding and collegial approach to this, which is very encouraging. What I guess I'm just wondering is there are still some unknown quantities when it comes to the cost of this project, the archaeological studies, and some of the still environmental concerns. So could you comment on what you might think would be the outside envelope if there were any additional funding required for this project?
So through the chair, we are optimistic we can adhere to the budget that's in front of you today. Within that, there is carrying some contingency. As you mentioned, the archaeological impacts and environmental sensitivities with this project, there is potential for a few more unforeseen things to pop up, but hope we're optimistic a lot for that within the contingency that's part of the recommendation.
Thank you, Andrew and Mr. Chair. I do have some other questions, but I'll let my colleagues go ahead, please.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Andrew and/or Al. We've been the recipient of community improvement funding through the Ministry of Infrastructure on this project. And my question to you is, was that a flat rate funding that was distributed equally among municipalities? I believe it was something we had actually applied for, and I'm raising it because I'm wondering, as the scope of our project changes, is there wiggle room to then go back to the ministry and let them know that the scope of our project and what is on the tax levy has changed substantially, and is if they're agreeing to funding on a percentage base of the overall project, is there any more dialogue happening on that level.
Through the chair to council. Yeah, I believe it was an application-based funding program. We will most definitely, when we do our next quarterly reporting, we will reach out to the ministry, or prior to that too. Depends on the timing of the reporting. We will reach out to them to let them know the project has expanded. Generally, there's only funding available if there's savings in other projects from other municipalities, and many times they don't know if they have any savings in their envelope of funding that they have distributed until closer to the end of the timeline when the projects are supposed to be finished. But we will definitely reach out to them, give them a heads up that we do have some overruns, and I believe it was a maximum funding level also, but we'll definitely look into it.
Thank you for that explanation. And one more question, Mr. Chair, through you to Andrew. Can you go in depth and share a little bit more information about the specifics of what is included in phase 2?
Through the chair, I'm actually going to rely on Mike to answer the details of the phase 2 construction work. I'm going out with him next week to take a look at it in person.
Yeah, sorry for that. Just had a little minor issues here. Through the chair, was that regard to phase 2 for the rehabilitation of the causeway or rehabilitation of the bridge?
If phase 2 is currently underway for both of those, then great. I'd like an update on what phase 2 entails for both.
Sure, thank you. Through the chair, we have paused the work on the causeway right now. We're focusing on the replacement of the actual structure right now, the bridge. So phase 1 was finished in February of actually this year. So we started on phase number 2. So it's down to single lane now. Well, we're working on phase number 2. And we hope if the strike is resolved, that we will be finished the rehabilitation replacement of the structure by the fall of 2022. With regards to the rehabilitation of the causeway, that's sort of the options that we're looking at, like, you know, how much money we still have to spend in the budget, what would be achievable knowing that we'd have to do some wetland work with compensation if we were to actually widen it out. So there's some unknown by cost there that we'll have to actually pursue, and that will be part of a future report, hopefully in the quarter number 3 to council.
And the road project, that'll be a separate memo coming back to council shortly.
Through the chair, that is correct. That's what Mike was alluding to at the end. Once we've gone through and evaluated these alternative measures, we'll bring those back to council for consideration, and in hopes that we can offset the costs that we're asking for today on the bridge side of the project.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor and Passon. Andrew, you had mentioned it about using recycled asphalt, and I noticed on page 239 of the agenda, it talks about at the bottom, rehabilitation using the cold in place recycling process of asphalt. And my understanding is the cold in place doesn't really hold up that well. It's the same material that we actually plug our potholes with one day, and then staff tell me they have to go back the next day or two to replug them. Can you give us some indication of the quality of this material and whether it's actually the best to move forward, or should it be hot mixed paving put in place?
So through the chair, I can start this off, and Mike certainly is the technical expert in this world. He can fill in anything that I've missed, but you're referring to what we call like KP. So that's what you're using for potholes. This is actually the full removal of road base. It's bind with other materials and laid back down. So it is quite durable, works quite well, and then also a top coat put on it. So It is a pretty, I'd say, new practice, but it is well tested and fairly durable. But I'd certainly welcome Mike to expand on that if he sees necessary.
Yes, through the chair, really nothing to add, but it's something that we've been doing here in Norfolk for the last probably 12 years or more. We're doing it this year on a few resurfacing projects that we have for Old Highway 24 in Waterford, and also Blue Line in Waterford as well. So, we basically recycle about 100 to 125 millimeters of the road pipe base. We add emulsion to actually strengthen it, and then we overlay with 60 mils of asphalt. And we expect a lifespan of this of about 15 years.
Thank you, Mike.
Councillor Vandenbroucke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. I'm wondering, being someone that does go down the Causeway, and it's going to be a significant inconvenience again this summer for residents as well as guests that come down to Long Point. Is there going to be some sort of press release to indicate this is ongoing and we've, what is encountered, or something to say that we would like people to have patience, because it does take a bit of time to get through, and it almost obviously slows up the traffic flow towards Long Point. So is there a method to get to the public to explain to them, we're looking for your patience?
Through the chair, absolutely happy to work with our communications team and figure out the best way to put that information forward. We certainly do our standard project releases through media releases and whatnot, but we can do a more proactive approach here, leveraging our communications team to make sure everyone's aware. We do appreciate this is an inconvenience for everybody, and we need their patience, but taking them along the journey so they know what we're doing is also very important.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Councillor Michelle, follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just did want to touch on the Causeway roadway item, even though I appreciate the fact that there will be a fair bit of time required for staff to fully investigate those two options. I guess I'm just going to ask, and this can be Andrew or Mike, the second option of the completing an asphalt overlay, is that what we're commonly referring to as scrape and pave?
Through the chair, yes, you're referring to shave and pave or scrape and pave. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. And I guess now just to go back to the bridge, because I think that today's discussion is primarily concerned with that, because it's a little bit more timely and relevant to what we are here for today. It indicates that one of the things, and I do appreciate Andrew, you mentioning that there have been a number of unforeseen delays, and there have been a number of reasons and a number of factors that have gone into those delays. And of course, the current labor dispute will perhaps be another delay. And I know that in some ways with this project, and Andrew, perhaps because you are coming to this with fresh eyes, I'm not sure you can make a longer list of potential delays for any project than the Long Point Causeway Bridge. But one of the items that you mentioned in the report is that you say, furthermore, the project is precedent setting as it's the first authorization for the destruction of federally protected critical habitat since the issuance of upgraded critical habitat orders by Fisheries and Oceans Canada. Andrew, and I don't want to put you on the spot, or Mike, but I'm just curious, what would be this is the first time this has been done since that was there. What would have been the year that we could have as reference point to that? Is this the first time that this has been done in like 5 years, 10 years? Just curious about the significance of the obtaining of this particular permit.
So through the chair, that is a good question. I believe the year is 2018, so we're not talking about decades, but certainly in the last 5 years, this designation has been in place. And something that we need to take into consideration for any other work that we do in that area. Hamilton, for example, where I used to work, we had similar with Coots Paradise there under provincial and federal designation. And there's always project complexities there. And this was our first kick at the can in Norfolk County and Long Point area, but we need to take this into account on projects going forward and make sure we flag all of those and budget appropriately for them on future initiatives.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I guess, Andrew, the reason I'm asking that question, I just do want to point out to members of the public that this was from the very beginning an extremely complicated and expectedly time-consuming process. And this particular one is a good example that this is the first time that the DFO has issued this permit to allow for the destruction of natural species habitat. So this project has had and continues to have so many moving parts. And I guess I'll get back to perhaps what Councillor Van Andriesch was mentioning. The public, I want to commend them for being so patient so far, and they'll, I'm sure, continue to be patient. Thank you. And Mr. Chair, I just have one more if I can ask that one.
Certainly, Councillor.
Thank you. The report indicates that we are going to get a report on the actual roadway of the Causeway in the future. And again, I don't intend to put staff on the spot in this question, but I'm just wondering, is it possible for us to perhaps get a ballpark estimate of the length of time before we might have that additional report?
So through the chair, we're hoping to come back in Q3, late Q3, with an information report to talk about those alternative measures.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And maybe staff can sort of give a little bit of history on this. I think the original plan on the roadway was to add bike lanes, widen shoulders, get full shoulders, even discussion about some boardwalks into the marsh, all of those things. I think that the report coming now, we've gone considerably over budget on the bridge. Is there some cutbacks possible on the planned road reconstruction that would save enough funds to fund the bridge? And I think that's what the report coming later will be coming out. Councillor Columbus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We all know that the Causeway Road is in a flood zone. And when I added up what Mr. King had mentioned to us, 125 millimeters of road emulsion, with emulsion, and then the 60 millimeters asphalt works out to about 7 inches. So are we looking at raising the height of the Causeway Road by 7 inches going forward?
Through the chair, yeah, we would recycle what's already there, the 125 millimeters. So we would only be raising the profile of the road roughly 60 to 70 millimeters. So roughly 3 inches.
Thank you. That should know.
Any other questions for staff? Seeing none, would somebody like to move the staff recommendation or propose an alternative? Councillor Michelli, the staff recommendation. Seconded by Councillor Van Andriesch. Any comments? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. And thank you to staff for that update. So it's been quite the project. Sooner or later, the different levels of government will realize when they start talking about threatened and endangered species and what we have down here in Norfolk County. We just got them all. So the report should only take about 5 minutes to fill out. Next item is staff report CS 22093, the salary gapping policy. And Kathy, are you presenting this?
Yes, I am. Thank you. Council may recall on April 12th, you approved a revised definition of approved budgeted complement and approved the development of a draft salary gapping policy for consideration. In addition, Council requested that staff provide more detailed statistical, vacancy, and turnover data. Staff have worked with the senior leadership team and human resources to develop the draft policy attached for Council's consideration today. In addition, staff reached out to various municipalities for best practices. However, only a couple had formal policies in place. With no policy in place in Norfolk County, the usage of gapping savings has been a little inconsistent and we need to be more transparent. Therefore, this policy formalizes a process for the review of vacated positions and will assist in managing the county staff complement in an efficient and effective manner, while providing staff with the flexibility to deal with complement levels. This flexibility will assist in meeting current service deliverables, special and one-time initiatives, and service enhancements, while remaining within council-approved budgets. When vacancies occur without the flexibility to maintain staffing levels, or at times the ability to expand staffing levels temporarily, reduced service delivery may result, or service quality provided by staff may be impacted. Enabling staff the ability to recruit temporarily while funding is available will ensure current levels of service are maintained and prevent excessive overtime, allow work-life balance, and also improve staff morale. The approval process for various situations such as increasing, decreasing, transferring complement, or changing complement's type is also clearly outlined in this policy, along with a few guidelines. As listed in the policy, the guidelines include limits for utilization of gapping, who will administer gapping dollars, when gapping dollars are to be used, and what happens to any savings that do occur at year end. And most importantly, reporting requirements to update council, SOT, and departments. Most importantly, this policy will be reviewed at a minimum every 2 years, as this policy will need to change as we move forward and react to different financial situations and employment demands and trends. Accompanying this report is also supplementary information providing more detailed vacancy and turnover data. Notably, 2021 saw a large number of vacancies and a higher turnover compared to prior years. And finally, we need to emphasize with this policy, the data collected is highly important to the operation of this organization. However, determining gapping savings and the collection of statistical employment information is a manual process in the absence of an HRIS system. Recognizing this importance, staff have developed robust tracking spreadsheets. However, this is still a manual process and requires a considerable amount of resource time, and there is a risk of misinformation. And at this time, as this policy is a joint project, we also have Ms. Anderson here, and welcome questions council may have at this time.
First ask CAO if he wants to make any additional comments on this. Councilor Martin, you got questions for staff?
I do, Mr. Chair. Thank you. First, I'd like to just provide staff with an opportunity to actually clarify some of the numbers specifically on the information memo, page 332 of 380 in our agenda. Staff, can you please speak to the adjusted turnover rate for clarity for the general public, because I know that we've received a lot of media attention about that previously, and there's been a new metric to report on this. So can you speak to that and clarify the numbers?
Thank you, through the chair. So what was reported in the April information memo was a turnover rate. So we calculate it was a vacancy rate. And so when we look at our data, we look at when people have moved positions within the organization, whether they've left the organization altogether. And so it's the total number of vacant positions that we have. And that was reported at 46%. When we actually look at the number of people who exited Norfolk County in 2021 due to like a resignation, a retirement, or a dismissal, what we found was that it was actually a 13% turnover rate. 119 people left the organization.
Thank you for that. My only questions pertaining to that section of the report, the remainder of my questions will be for the gapping dollars, but specifically page 334, the top 5 reasons listed in the exit interviews. My question through you, Mr. Chair, to staff is, how does this get addressed going forward? So it's great that we have, the top 5 reasons, but what are we doing about that moving forward?
Thank you through the chair to Councillor Martin. So as we, look at exit interviews and we collect the information, listed here on the memo, we've got better job pay, career growth, promotion, quality work-life balance, workload, communication, lack of support and trust. And so with the support of the CAO and the senior leadership team, we're looking at ways to improve the organizational culture. And one of the ways that we're doing that is through a program called Psychological Health and Safety. And we've started already implementing this program, and it looks at the 13 factors for psychological health and safety. And when we look at these factors, we focus on the items and look at how we can get ideas to actually action in the organization to improve all of those factors. And so when we look at those actionable items, we can improve organizational culture, we can improve work-life balance, we can improve the overall health of employees and the overall health of the organization. And so we continue to do that. We look at other avenues as well. There's a report coming in June from the CAO that will address some of those items and look for support from council.
Okay, thanks for that, Erin. Mr. Chair, my questions are directly pertaining to the corporate salary gapping policy. A few of the questions I had last time around, I see that they're, unless I'm reading it incorrectly, they're not really identified for me. So page 3 of 4, which is page 330 in our agenda, speaks to the guidelines. I'd like to pose a couple questions to staff. Why the salary gapping savings will not include partially or fully funded positions? Why that is?
Through the chair to Councillor Martin. These areas are generally not included because they have no or little net levy impact to the taxpayer. For example, public health is funded 75%. If they do not utilize the 75%, they'll just receive reduced funding and our levy impact would still remain the same. And a lot of times, and we've seen this in the OW, where they've had to relook at the organization because funding is reduced, because a lot of times funding is based on the actuals from the prior year. And we've seen that in a number of different ministries taking that type of action.
Okay, thank you for that. As discussed last time around, the policy stipulates 75% gapping savings determined to be used by the CAO, 25 by the senior leadership team. So how, if you could please walk me through how those dollars will be then decided upon, how they be spent, and how that is going to manifest into the reporting system below. At what point in time will council be made aware of the initiatives that staff, the CAO and senior leadership team deem to be appropriate use of the dollars?
Through the chair to Councillor Martin. The first part of the question relating to the CAO, the 75% of gapping dollars, that is, the CAO will be working with individual general managers and managers as vacancies become available. There will be a review of the position and the need for the position, or if the position needs to be revamped, etc. And through the CAO's approval, they will either move forward with filling the position and or change the position, one or the other. The SLT portion that the 25% is being allocated to, most likely SLT will be listening to some of council's and the public's desires and wants and some new initiatives maybe that are coming forward, and they will prioritize those initiatives and utilize the 25% gapping dollars at that time. We are on a monthly basis recording or tracking. Again, it's a very time consuming, but we are tracking the gapping dollars so the departments have information available. And again, HR is tracking the timing between vacancies. I believe the last memo indicated about the average was 82 days between a vacated position and the position being filled. That we will continue to have those gapping dollars at this time. As far as reporting to council, I believe it's semi-annually we have in the policy that will report to council, and at that time we can provide a summary of the details. I hope that answers all of your questions.
Thank you. So further to that, going back to number 4 with the CAO approval, those are already things that are already currently happening. The CAO is currently reviewing when the position, if there's a vacancy, the position itself, whether it's needed. Is it safe to say that that portion is currently not wrapped into a policy anywhere else across the county? It's now being incorporated into the salary gapping policy?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would say this formalizes the process that we're currently having right now.
Okay, and further to that, so would it be appropriate in this policy then to add in, if council so chooses, some language around the removal of or revamping of an SLT position to come to council, have a notification period to council? Obviously not looking to micromanage the CAO. It's your responsibility to identify these positions and whether they're being utilized fully and so on. But if it was an SLT position and you deemed that it was appropriate for that to be restructured and or changed, I'm just looking for some, notification to council if it would be appropriate to add it into this policy.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I mean, we can certainly add it. From my perspective, I wouldn't be making changes of that magnitude without first consulting with council and advising council and seeking your feedback on it. But if you'd like, we can certainly incorporate that in there to formalize that.
Sorry, I know, Al, that's a finicky one, but for other CAOs in the future, other councils in the future, I think that might be something I personally would like to see. My only other question is regarding number 6. The salary gapping savings may also be used in the recruitment process for senior positions, including advertising, recruitment firms, and moving costs. And while I fully stand by this, I think the salary gapping dollars should be invested back into our team and our staff. I also would question the use of the recruitment firms and moving costs without maybe a council kind of discussion if that's being used for SLT positions. I could be wrong, but that one caught my eye. So I would look for my colleagues to jump in on that conversation pertaining to number 6 and the guidelines. No further questions. Thanks.
If I could get some clarity, we would like something added to this policy, or has there been a practice that SLP has been using in the past, and does this policy now replace that past practice since we are formalizing a policy? Does that achieve the same goal as what you were looking for?
I'm not sure if I fully understand. What I'm trying to drive at is I think this is current practices of our team and of our CAO existing, up until present day. We have not previously had a policy. Now we do. So if we're going to formalize it, I would like to formalize all elements of it, including notification, on any changes made to the SLT role or positions that would then therefore contribute to gappings or salary dollars. And I'm also interested in having a discussion if council thinks it's appropriate that salary gapping savings should be used for recruitment firms and or moving costs of senior leadership team members. Those are the 2 things I'd like to roundtable.
Maybe when we're done with the rest of the questions from council, I'll come back to you. You might want to refer this whole report back to staff once they hear the input from council. But have Councillor Van Andriessen and then Councillor Huffman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to staff. When I look at the vacancies that are still existing, how are we doing in recruiting now? I know that's just a bit of an off topic, but it's in our package here. And how does it affect our services? And how are we coping with that?
Through the chair to Councillor Van Andrieschie. From a recruitment standpoint, there's some positions that are tough to fill. And so when we don't have people in those positions, other staff members are picking up or services aren't being actioned. So we are doing our best, and we, from an HR perspective, we're diving in and looking at our recruitment processes and how can we revamp them and make them better. But it certainly is a challenge when we've got some really tough to fill positions within the corporation.
Can I ask you, is there opportunities to go outside the actual staffing and hire firms that can help in certain departments?
Through the chair to Councillor Van Andrieschie, we just have to be careful. We have unionized positions in the corporation, and so we can't contract work out that would normally be done by unionized staff.
But the question is, if we are unable to secure the correct staffing for that department or wherever, wouldn't it be reasonable to say that if we need some outside assistance, that we should be looking for it? And that could be negotiated with the union to understand that if we can't find into the position, that we need some help, because it's the services for our communities that is necessary, that we need to have this. We can't keep going behind and behind and behind with some things, and our communities aren't getting the service that they require.
Through the chair to Councillor Van Andrieschie, yes, we can certainly have those conversations with our unionized partners. I would suspect that the question from the union would be, have you done everything possible to recruit? And so we need to exhaust all of our avenues in trying to hire those positions.
And speaking of that, is there any assistance that you would need or you are looking for from council to be able to pursue even further those requirements?
Through the chair to Councillor Van Andrieschie, some of our biggest challenges with specialized positions comes down to our wages and comes down to our location. And so we do offer some work from home capabilities, but I think one of our challenges is wages at this point.
Right.
And we've got some significant gaps in certain positions where we know we are below our comparator municipalities. We're not even hitting close to the 50th percentile for those positions.
I think that's an important statement. Thank you.
Councillor Huffman.
Thank you, Chair Van Passen. Through you to staff. I guess I just wanted to pick up a little bit following up on Councillor Martin's comments. So guidelines number 2, the salary gapping savings will not include partially or fully funded positions. I understand that in terms of that those funds aren't directly related to the tax levy. My question is, how do, I know this is regarding salary gapping, but just kind of humor me for a bit. How do we take those vacancies and make sure that we're including those vacancies into the overall culture of the agency of the county, and understanding that we do have vacancies there and why we have vacancies there?
Through the chair, I'm not sure I'm understanding your question. So, sorry, can you just?
Okay, I guess. Oh, sorry, Aaron. I didn't mean to yell or anything. What I'm trying to surmise is, where is the, we're looking at this in terms of dollars. I understand that, but you're talking about a report that's going to be coming in June. And I just want to make sure that we're capturing the vacancies of these fully funded positions. And when we're looking at these reasons that they were leaving because of better job opportunity, better pay, those types of things. But also I'm quite concerned that we have communication down there and lack of support. Are we able to track Are we still tracking those positions even though they don't have a financial impact from our levy?
The chair, council. Yes, absolutely. We are tracking all positions in the what their funding allocation. So when people leave the corporation, whether it's from health and social services, whether it's from medic services, we have all of those, and they're all employees of the county, and so they fall from a corporate.
My next question is, has it ever been considered in terms of the salary gapping dollars, one of the uses of them is that when we have individuals who are picking up the slack for positions that are vacant, that we look at some kind of remuneration for these individuals?
Through the chair to Councillor Huffman, we do have a policy and there's language in collective agreements where if you take on additional of another position or a higher level position, there's a percentage increase. Or we put them in an acting role or they go into those roles. But certainly, in some cases, I would say it's not enough. I'm being completely. Staff are doing a lot of work and taking on a lot of work.
Because I have experience working at a place where gapping was a big thing, and staff were not enumerated for that extra work, and that creates a very negative aspect in the culture of the workplace. I'd also like to know, what are some of the new recruitment practices that you've been looking at?
We're looking at our job posting boards. We're looking at the way we communicate our job posting and the descriptors, and we're looking at where it's being posted. We use an online and it goes out to the job board. Where are we getting the most out of it? We're looking at streamlining our so that the onboarding for people, that sort of thing. So our HR team has looked at all areas of the recruitment from start to finish, and it's making recommendations.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions for staff? Seeing none, go back to Councillor Martin. On my little crib sheet, it says anybody remove the staff recommendation, but if you have some suggestions on improvements or changes, the option to refer it back to staff and they can look at those proposed changes and bring the report back at the next council meeting or at some point that you deem adequate. But I'll look to the clerk and to the CAO to see if that's an acceptable option today.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think as Councillor Martin was making some of those recommendations, both the clerk and I were going back, and the clerk may have something ready to respond to councillor's recommendations. And if we can put it on screen and if all of council's agreeable to it, we can make those changes today and move forward so we don't have to come back.
That would be my question, whether staff's comfortable. Will they keep telling us not to do policy on the fly? So, is this item very time sensitive that you'd like it implemented as quickly as possible, or would you like the chance to review it and bring it back at our next council? Okay, Councillor Martin, I've just sort of identified the parameters. It's up to council to decide what they want to do.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I think that my amendments would be very subtle. Just the policy would still read as is. It would just include a notification on 2 particular guidelines to council. So I don't think it's good use of staff time to send it back and have it amended for additional discussions and so on. I would just like a moment to review how this reads on the screen though, please.
You want me, through the chair to Councillor Martin, do you want me to read it out? And that a clause be added to indicate that if any restructuring of senior leadership positions is considered, that the CAO bring forward a report for council's information. That would be the first clause, clause 4. And then clause 6, that clause 6 be amended as follows. Salary gapping savings may also be used in the recruitment process for senior positions. Understanding advertisement may be included. And if recruitment firms and moving costs are part of the recruitment, that a report to council be brought forward for information.
Thank you, Teresa. Through you, Mr. Chair, to Al. So I'd just like your 2 cents on that last part there. If you're bringing an information memo forward, is that just a notification to council about a recruitment firm and or moving costs? And if so, does that put you significantly behind the 8 ball in, you know, a potential hiring process? I can very easily see the funding being used for recruitment firms at your discretion. That, you know, if you put a posting out and it's not successful, and you think a recruitment firm needs to be brought in, that's your role to do so. It's more so the moving costs that are kind of rubbing me the wrong way, because I could see them being inconsistent from candidate to candidate. And so what is the metric that we would determine and so on?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to council and to Councillor Martin. Part of what we're finding is that, you know, in order to attract qualified staff to the county, there are many tools that go into that, and part of that oftentimes is moving costs. If we're asking a qualified staff member to pick up their family, pick up their livelihood, move to the county, oftentimes in order to be competitive in this very competitive marketplace right now, you have to throw in some things there that give the county a competitive advantage, and one of those things oftentimes are moving costs. Is it something that you need to do in all cases? No. Is it some things that you have to do in some cases? Yes. And so really, you know, what we're trying to do with this gapping policy and what we're trying to make to council's attention and make it very, very clear is that in this competitive market, we need to be nimble. We need to be every bit as competitive as the private sector in attracting talent, getting qualified people here. And if it means sometimes that you have to spend a little bit of money to hire a recruitment firm that goes out and actually poaches some individuals that are currently employed, that's what we need to do. And sometimes what you need to do as well is provide some relocation costs as well, so that they become part of the community and so that they become and have a vested interest in the county. And so really what we're saying is this has to be part of the tool chest in terms of some of the things that we need to dig into if we're going to attract and retain qualified staff. So what you're going to find is not only in this policy, but in the report that's going to be coming forward in June to council for council's consideration is what can we do as a county to put additional things in our toolbox to attract people. And oftentimes what that means is we have to go out and we have to invest and find the right people, and then we have to make a competitive recruitment and an offer to get people here. And so that's what we're asking for in this. You know, if the way I'm wording this and the way I'm reading this is we will be bringing that information forward for council's information. What we're talking about is utilizing gapping dollars so that it's not necessarily going to be taxing on the levy. What we're saying is when we've got a vacancy, we're going to have some savings. And if we have to tap into those savings in order to attract an individual by perhaps putting in some moving costs there as part of the package, we will. And if it means sometimes that we've got to go out and find a recruitment firm that's going to go out and find us the very best of the best that's available, that's what we'll do as well. So that's really what we're saying here.
Thank you for that. So my original question though is an information memo is not going to slow your process up. It is just going to act as a notification to council. You're comfortable with that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I am comfortable with that.
Okay, thank you. I think that is suitable, Teresa, and I'd like to move forward with the motion and get it done today.
So you've moved the motion on the screen then, Councillor, seconded by Councillor Van Andriessen. Any discussion? All in favor? That was carried. The next item on the agenda is, it actually is the one that I pulled from the agenda before I knew I'd be chairing the meeting. So I would like to pass the chair to Councillor Van Andriessen, since she is now our new chair of Council Committee. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I will assume the chair for the item 11.5.2, an information memo of the property sale update at Waverly Street in Delhi. And Councillor Van Passen, you requested this be pulled. So further, would you like to speak to this item or to this memo?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I pulled this. This is the property that went through the tax sale process, and we vested the property. I think it was the third time that it went through the process without any solution to it. We took possession of it. We did the environmental assessment, and we listed it with real estate, and we sold it. And what my intention was to take the net proceeds from the sale. We have a specific reserve account that deals with the costs associated when people take their properties to the assessment review board and are successful in changing the assessment. And sometimes we have to reimburse them some of their taxes they've already paid after that process takes place. And last year we increased the amount we put into that reserve because with the delays in the reassessment by MPAC due to COVID, I think we're expecting down the road a bunch more appeals to the assessment review board, and we might need some extra funding in that reserve. And I thought this would be a good place to park these funds, since it's not the sale of a capital asset because we never really owned it. And it came about through the tax sale process. But what I have found through the detailed mind of our clerk, because we approved this at a special meeting of council, in order to change it, it would take a request for reconsideration. And I don't think it is that important that it warrants a request for reconsideration. But I think the clerk has a draft of a motion to sort of review where the funds are currently going into the contingency reserve and the property management reserve. And I think we could give direction that we review that at budget time next year in 2023, and we wouldn't have to change any of the current situation. So I would ask the clerk if she still had that little draft of a motion.
Through the chair, I do have the motion. I will put up on the screen, but I would like to pass it over to Kathy LaPlante, who will speak to whether that assessment review reserve exists.
Thanks, Teresa. Through the chair and to council. Currently, we do not have an assessment review board reserve. What we do have is a budget line item in our annual budgets. And you are correct, Councillor Van Passen, we did increase that substantially last year. I believe in 2021, the original budget was, the base budget was 850,000, and we increased it by 600,000 for 2022. And again, we are still in a position that we probably have to increase it more. So we will definitely need to create some type of reserve or allowance to address these items that are a lot of times they're unknown, and the magnitude of these reviews or appeals are unknown too. So, but just want to clarify that there is no reserve, but we do have an annual budget line item. I believe it's $1.25 million this time.
Are there any questions of councillors? Yes.
Madam Chair, I do not have a question with respect to this reserve. I just want to make a comment on this report. Can I do it now, or?
Yes, you make a comment.
Okay, I just wanted to make mention about this particular property on Waverly Street. It is the former Delhi antenna plant, Solac. They used to make many antennas for everyone's household television reception for a good many years, from 1950s and 60s and 70s till internet came by, I guess, fiber and all that other stuff. This property has been abandoned for a number of years. It's rather unsightly. I get a lot of concerns my way about it. So I'm very pleased that it has been sold for a substantial amount, $900,000. And there was tax arrears on it, over $400,000. So we'll be making good use of the extra income. There are a number of jobs apparently coming with it, so it is significant sale. And anyway, I'm sure the neighborhood will really appreciate the fact that it's becoming one under new ownership. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there anyone else has any comment or question? If not, I will refer back to the clerk. If the clerk could read the motion.
So through the chair, if someone wants to move this, that staff be directed to review the county's various reserves, reserve mandates and balances, and bring a report forward to the 2023 budget deliberations with recommendations, if any, including strategies related to but not limited to an assessment review reserve and the industrial land reserve.
Thank you. I turn to you, Councillor Van Passen. Since you brought it up, would you like to make this a motion?
Yes, I'd be happy to move that motion and see if I could find a seconder.
Yes, I have Councillor Michele willing to second your motion. Are there any questions? Any debate? If not, I call the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. I return the chair back to its rightful owner.
Thank you, Councilor Van Andriessen. Next item on the list is bylaws. Are there any council members wishing to speak to any of the bylaws before us for approval? Councilor Columbus.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, I would ask that 12.1 and 12.6 be pulled and dealt with separately, because I wish to vote opposite to what was presented during the council meeting.
Any other questions?
Through the chair, would you like some help with that, that motion?
Would you like to read the motion, Madam Clerk? I was just searching through trying to see which one I had to scratch out, but you've already achieved that, I'm sure.
Yeah, no problem.
So, could we get a mover and a seconder for all the remaining ones, right? So the clerk will read them out.
So the mover would be moving approval of bylaws 10Z 2022 to 13Z 2022 inclusive, bylaw 2022-32, 2022-42, 2022-43, 2022-45, 2022-47, and 2022-48, and that the bylaws be signed by the mayor and clerk and affixed with the corporate seal.
Moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Huffman. Discussion. All in favor? That is carried. Then bylaw 3 OP 2022 and bylaw 14Z 2022. We would support the motion to move them as well now.
Through the deputy mayor, do you want to do each of those separate or do you want to do them together?
Separate, Councillor Cole? Got it. Together, get a mover for bylaw 3 OP-2022 and 14Z-2022. A mover. Councilor Van Andriessen, you're moving them. These are the bylaws to approve the property at 6 Victoria. Second, Martin. All those in favor? It's carried. Those opposed? 2 opposed. Thank you. Motions, we have none. Any notices of motion? Seeing none. Any general announcements? Mr. Huffman?
Thank you, Chair Van Passen. Through you, I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge some fantastic service to our community. On Saturday, I attended the retirement celebration of Captain Gary Lomas with the Station 3 Waterford Fire Department with 42 years of service, and District Chief Bill Brewer with 52 years of service for Station 3, the Waterford Fire Department. Altogether, 94 years of total service these two gentlemen have provided, along with their families, I must say, because obviously being a volunteer firefighter involves the whole family. And it was a great celebration of community, and these gentlemen, their leadership in our community will certainly be missed. I have heard from good authority from the guys who are still there that the door is open for them to pay visits anytime that they want. So anyways, just wanted to let people know that the town of Waterford, Ward 7 councillor is extremely proud of these two gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to take this opportunity to thank all of the Norfolk County staff for their assistance with Friday the 13th. We had beautiful weather. We had an excellent turnout. Thanks to our community members for their flexibility as we closed roads and parking lots and so on, and condolences to the fatal accident that did occur on Blue Line in St. John's. But you know, our staff work really hard. You wake up first thing in the morning and there's a bunch of empty garbage cans left on the road, and you'd never know 100,000 people were in our town the day before. So kudos to Norfolk County staff.
Your staff will take that back to all the guys who actually dumped the cans. Councillor Columbus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I know Councillor Michelle will be very pleased to learn that I did find a copy of the petition that was submitted by the rural community in the vicinity of County Road 45 Bridge, supporting a 2-lane concrete bridge. It was actually signed in February of 2019, quite some time ago. So we were told that the clerk's department didn't have it, but I do have a copy here, which I will be presenting to Ms. Olson. I won't read the petition. It's just exactly what it's supporting a 2-lane concrete bridge. They gave the reasons. Thank you.
This is when you've been a councillor for a long time. You have a whole filing cabinet full of these papers. A whole room.
Look deep for this one.
Good. Councillor Van Andreesen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. I'd like to thank Gopher Dunes for their invitation to take a visit at the off-road motorcycle institution that's out there. And I'll, in the future, bring a report. But I have to say it was extremely impressive. It was impressive to meet these young people, these young gentlemen that are champions across the country, and meeting the Honda off-road cycle team that's going across country. So good luck to them on their endeavors. And I will bring a little something back to explain to you what is all offered there, in case you're ever interested in riding off-road vehicles. Thank you.
Go for a test drive.
I looked at those bikes and said, no, thank you.
I was going to say, I wanted video. Any other general announcements? Seeing none, we have 2 closed session items, and might I suggest that we get a motion, a mover and seconder to go into closed session, and then we'll take a 10-minute break. Staff can make whatever adjustments. Motion will be that council enter in closed session at 2:56 p.m. to discuss the following matters: OLT case number OLT-22-003453, legal advice for the southwest corner Highway 3 and Coxsett Road in Renton, and item 6.18.2 in an information memo, interest arbitration warrant between the Corporation of Norfolk County and the Service Employee International Union, Local 1 Canada, for the term January 1st, 2020 to December 31st, 2022. Pursuant to Section 239(2) D, E, and F of the Municipal Act of 2001 as amended, as the subject matters pertain to labor relations or employee negotiations, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communication necessary for that purpose. We have a mover, Councilor Rabbit, seconded by Councilor Michele. All in favor? It's carried. We'll be back at 3:10 p.m. Okay, we are back from closed session. We're back into open session. As an update, item 16.1, legal counsel was provided direction in closed session. There is no motion coming out of that. And item 16.2, wonder if the clerk could read the motion coming out of 16.2.
Thank you. Through the chair, we will need a mover and a seconder that the confidential information memo interest arbitration award between the Corporation of Norfolk County and the Service Employees International Union, Local 1 Canada, for the term January 1st, 2020 to December 31st, 2022 be received as information, and that a bylaw be passed authorizing the mayor and the county clerk to sign the collective agreement on behalf of the Corporation of Norfolk County.
I have a mover for that motion. Councillor Rabbit, a seconder. Councillor Columbus, any comments? All in favor? That is carried. The next item, can I have a motion on bylaw 2022-46 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of Norfolk County on this regular council meeting held on the 17th day of May 2022, and the bylaw be approved, signed by the mayor and the clerk, and affixed to the corporate seal. Mover, Councillor Michelli, seconded by Councillor Van Andrieschie. All in favor? That is carried. I have a motion to adjourn. Councillor Huffman, seconded by Councillor Martin. All in favor? That is carried. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.